All right. Thank you, John. Thank you so much, Andy. Thanks, everybody. It's great. It's strange, actually. I won't say great. It's strange at first to be together with all these people and walking past folks with their laptops.
Actually, what's strange is this holding pen right here.
Yeah. But it's delightful to get to be with you all. So, Matt, welcome.
Thank you. And
to be with Matt Spiegel, especially for these 12 minutes. So you all know Matt, but he's worked in almost every facet of this industry, agency, consultant, tech, and now at TransUnion at a time of, for the last 3 years at TransUnion, at a time of consolidation in the data and identity space. And indeed, TransUnion has emerged as a key consolidator in that space. Bought TrueOptic. I see Andre over here. That was last fall 2020, and then earlier this fall, acquired Neustar, of course. So lots to talk about.
Yeah.
So
true. Yes.
But before we do, let me just get a thought from you, Matt, on getting together again as an industry.
Yeah, it's great to be together again. There is a little bit, I've been thinking about it, does take a little bit of practice. Right? I think we got to rebuild the muscles of being able to have the sequence of conversations over and over and over again that we probably haven't done in the same way. But it feels great to be out and about, and I'm a little tired.
Yeah, same. But you were just saying that you have enough people here potentially to do an Omnicom reunion, so
yeah.
A little bit of it.
Show of hands if you've worked at Omnicom.
Yeah.
Right? See, look at that.
All right, so late night round of drinks for Omnicom.
On Kettleman. Kettleman's mine.
All right, so we have such limited time. Let's talk about data in television. Big picture question, what's the use case for data-driven TV, and how is that different from the programmatic use case for data?
Well, I think the mission is the same, and I think the comparison we're making, right, is about plus or minus a decade ago, we were having these kind of conversations about whether audience-based buying and planning was relevant, right? And a decade ago, I think there was a much more debate on whether or not the move from or in addition to context to audiences was going to matter. And I think over the last decade, we've found that it definitely matters, right? Marketers have clearly voted with their wallets by showing where they've put new dollars that when you have identity-underpinned targeting and opportunities, there's a better ROI. And I think a decade ago, though, we were spending a lot of time, it was really a second-tier conversation because we were talking about, unfortunately, but it's where we started, leftover inventory, and so it just kind of automatically regulated this conversation to a different era or a different part of the discussion. I think that part just, felt kind of, quote, different then. But at the core, what are we up to as we're talking about this now in the streaming media world and television ecosystem? Otherwise it's the same, right? That precision targeting helps, it drives better ROI, and that the more we do that, the more effective marketing will be. And so I think at the core, the conversation is one of the same. It's just kind of repeating itself for a different part and era of the marketplace in a ways that I think is better, but we're still seeing some of the same challenges that we were talking about a decade ago.
When you say a better opportunity, because of the creative impact with television, that just surpasses programmatic digital?
Well, one of the arguments was always that sight, sound, and motion was the most powerful form of advertising. And that was certainly the argument back in the day, like, why are we spending so much time on a display ecosystem when the real power is in sight, sound, and motion? I think that's accurate, and I think that the fact that this discussions have blended is great news. I for one was always curious as to why we would separate the notion of data being good for one type of investment but not for another. But again, a decade ago, those capabilities didn't exist for what was the big dollar, mass TV ecosystem. A linear television world doesn't allow this in the same way. So it is the digitization of this industry that allows for this conversation to now apply broadly. And yeah, listen, good news, we're now having a conversation not as a mechanism to monetize otherwise unvalued inventory. We're having a conversation about the fact that precision and addressability leads to better marketing ROI. That's a much more interesting conversation, and also as a result of it being all about the all forms of inventory, it means actually the key leaders of the industry care. right? The big media companies care, the big agencies care at a level that when programmatic discussions started, it was the thing we were doing on the side.
Okay, great. So, since it does basically follow the roadmap for digital programmatic, I wonder if we're making the same mistakes that we did in digital programmatic. I mean, one issue would just be targeting ads to audiences wherever you find them, regardless of brand safety or suitability.
Yeah, I think we have the potential for the same mistakes. I'm not so sure in all the same ways. I'm not sure necessarily. I think the good news about the TV ecosystem, certainly from the head of it, there's a much less concern about fraud. Now, again, in the streaming ecosystem, it's not none, but I think comparatively to that, display era, I think it's much less of a concern. But I do think, listen, one of the fundamental differences that I think is important to call out is the reality in the programmatic world of display, we weren't dealing actually with identity. It was the word being used, but it wasn't identity. It was browser-based cookie sessions. Right? To do what we're talking about now requires a whole level of actual, real, true understanding of, and I think Andre, a colleague, said it great last night, PhD, people, households, and devices. Right? And the fact that we are actually talking about real identity actually changes the game of how this all works. The challenge actually now becomes the mistakes we're making is, well, we don't have a choice at some level about fragmentation. That's not our choice to make. Consumers are going to spend time in lots of platforms across lots of channels. And as a result, marketers are going to want to invest across all those channels. And of course, each media company is going to want to get some dollars.
So that's just something we have to accept and live with.
Unless we can all decide as consumers we're all going to adopt a single media platform as our content preference, I think it's here.
Right, yeah, right? It is. It's just part of our lives. And I think that's what's new about the programmatic industry is that everybody's getting a little more realistic about the limitations that we should accept and try to move forward with.
But here, and to this reality, because of fragmentation, the mistake that I do see us potentially making again, and it isn't again, remember how we spent the last several years talking about how much the tech tax was? And how silly it was that 50 cents of every dollar was not making its way to the endpoint. I think we've got the risk of recreating that reality right now. And I actually think it's a lot because we're very good in this industry about getting excited about new shiny objects, right? And right now we've got a lot of companies, understandably so. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. Innovation happens on the edges. But for the streaming media ecosystem, to be looking at so many point solutions in my mind is silly, right? Part of the job there is companies like us to do a better job of stitching together, making clear what we're capable of, to really be an enabler. But yeah, there is a major risk that what we're gonna do is have a ton of tech, individual tech components all around the same goal, and you guys are gonna all worry about all the costs that you're including in the system. It's gonna make it really hard for this thing to scale.
All right, so household ID versus user level. You want to share a few thoughts on that and how close we are to resolving the tension there?
I disagree with the tension. It's a yes and. This is not an either or. And companies that truly do identity resolution, and actually I think that's another big challenge for us, is appreciating just how hard doing true identity resolution is. Right? That's a massive data science problem. This is not simple. But those of us that spend a ton of time doing it invest a ton of time and energy to be able to translate between devices and households and people. And so I think it has to be a yes and it has to be focused on the identity signals that are going to come next. It's only a matter of time before we're talking about voice as an identity signal that matters. Right? I think that one's obvious. Yeah, I think that tension's a false choice. We need all of it, and we're going to have some things which we're going to buy on a household basis, or not we, those of you that either sell or buy advertising. Some's going to be done household, some's going to be individualized. I think you got to be able to solve for both.
Okay, so we've heard a little bit yesterday from Adam Gerber, among others, about the sort of concerning trend around just there not being enough high-quality attention in the CTV space. And with that dynamic, you have to demand overwhelming supply for that sort of top-tier inventory. Does that lead to a situation where real-time bidding and dynamic ad selection goes away, is replaced by strictly reserved and guaranteed dynamics? And how does that affect the data opportunity, if so?
So I think I would disconnect dynamic ad insertion from biddable. Those are two different things. You can have dynamic ad insertion without doing biddable inventory. So I do think the TV ecosystem was never headed to a world of high level of biddability. I think that's unlikely. I think in the streaming ecosystem, there's more biddability than maybe some would have predicted, so I don't think that goes away. Again, regardless, I think dynamic ad insertion, I think would change the game. I don't think that's coming to a linear world anytime soon, but it sounds nice to think about. So does that have an impact on the data-driven world? No, I don't think the lack of biddability does. Listen, I think what unfortunately unfortunately, what we got used to thinking about is that the mission was one-to-one marketing at scale. Practically speaking, we're not going after one-to-one marketing at scale, we're going after micro-segmentation at scale, right? We need to have not 5 segments, but 50 segments, or not 50, 500, whatever the ratio you want to think about is. That can be effectively done at a household level, right? That can be effectively done in clusters that matter, and quite frankly, in a privacy and consent world that we're looking at going forward, a lot of that's going to be necessary anyway. And so, again, I think these are not issues. These are tension points to work out. There's unlikely to be any one answer, but I think I'm going to keep voting for all of the above.
So I want to spend our last couple of minutes talking about TransUnion. You guys, historically a credit bureau. What are you doing messing around with identity and data?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, and I've had this discussion with some of you in the last day, is if you think about at the core, what does a credit bureau do? It resolves identity in order to help financial institutions choose whether or not you deserve a loan, as one use case. So the level of identity resolution that is required in that ecosystem is off the charts more complex and requires much more accuracy than anything we do in the marketing ecosystem. And so if you start from understanding that our heritage actually is in identity resolution, and in a world where certainly it's become digitized, and we can see now an opportunity to apply that type of data science to a marketing world, it actually makes a ton of sense that we're in this space. And we're very, very clear about our swim lane, right? And our swim lane is very much focused on number one, again, identity resolution, which I think one day, hopefully we can all unpack at scale to understand what that really means, accurate identity resolution provider. Number one, so that's the who. Number two, we're gonna be all about helping you understand how to create segments and audiences. And three, with our Neustar acquisition, we'll be more focused on the analytics side of it, right? Marketing performance measurement, not the currency or exposure measurement discussion that's happened, but on the performance side of it. So I actually think it makes a ton of sense we're in this space, and it is driven because this ecosystem, to do what all of us are wanting to do, to make this a data-driven ecosystem that's scaled, needs data providers at the core that aren't just raw data feeds, but actually do the hard data science work to stitch this all together, right? And actually, there's very few of us that are gonna be credible on that space. And again, one of the other, I suppose back to Zach, your earlier question, one of the things that I'm concerned about is the notion that whether you're a buyer or seller in this industry, that you need to go it alone on creating your identity capabilities. It's not going to be possible. And it's not an all or nothing thing. Of course you need to invest in your own data assets. Of course you have to monetize or to leverage your own data. But the idea that that makes you an identity resolution provider is silly. Right? And many of us, actually no, there are few of us that are actually spending the actual dollars necessary to wire up both the data science capabilities and the distribution such that you guys can all do what you want to do, which is to either deliver better advertising or buy more performant advertising. And I think the sooner that that's recognized, the faster this thing's going to move.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Matt Spiegel, thank you so much.
That was the closing salvo?
Yeah.